this week on the Deep Leadership Podcast.
And I would challenge every leader listening to this to really don't let too many years go by without sitting down with the team and really resetting to say, what are we doing? What's working? What's not working? How can we improve the relationships on this team? Is there anything that I'm not seeing as a leader that would help me serve you all better? Ask your team some of these questions. And I know that's hard as an entrepreneur sometimes because we rejection and failure hurts, but your team will love you ever more for it. And they'll run through a brick wall for you if you show that kind of humility and vulnerability with your team, and your business will be better for it.
This episode is brought to you by the Salty Sailor Coffee Company, the official coffee of the Deep Leadership Podcast. Salty Sailor is a veteran-owned coffee brand on a mission to deliver premium, fresh roasted coffee while making a positive impact in the world. Their motto is drink coffee and do good, which reflects their commitment to making amazing coffee and actively supporting the military community. 10% of every order goes to the Navy Marine Corps Relief Society, an organization dedicated to helping sailors, Marines, and their families in times of need. All our listeners get 10% off every order of their amazing coffee by using the discount code DEEP at checkout. So check them out at saltysailorcoffee.com. Welcome to the Deep Leadership Podcast. Today I'm joined by Joshua Washington. Joshua is the founder of Lee Malveaux, a people strategy and solutions company specializing in helping businesses scale by using the latest research in psychology to create work cultures that inspire peak performance. Joshua has worked with over 200 businesses for nearly a decade, from startups to multi-million-dollar enterprises. He has extensive experience training and coaching some of the brightest minds in business. He's also a top-rated keynote speaker who has spoken in front of audiences of up to 5,000 people. And I'm excited to have him on the show to talk about the role of leaders in business performance. So, Joshua, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, man. I'm happy to be on.
Yeah, it's great to meet you. And I'm really excited to talk about kind of what you do and what you've learned over the years talking with entrepreneurs and business owners and business leaders. But first of all, tell us a little bit about your background and how you developed an interest in communication and human behavior.
Yeah, man, that's quite a journey it's been. I always, whenever I'm asked this question, I think about when I was leaving off to college, what I told my mom I wanted to do. I said, Mom, I want to go do music and something that involves loving people. So that was my career plan at that point. And that's kind of where how it's evolved into the whole human behavior and human performance aspect. I believe that every human is valuable and every human has something valuable to add to the organization if we are willing to extract it, help them kind of lead them through that process. So that's kind of how I got started. I got my BA in interpersonal communication, in organizational communication. And then that led to getting my master's in organizational psychology. And I've just been working and coaching with executives ever since.
I love that. The idea that every person is important is something that I talk about a lot. My started my career as a naval submarine officer, and every member of the crew was essential to the mission. And so that always resonated with me as I went into business, that every employee is essential to our business. And I think we treat them that way, and we give them the respect that they need, and we try to help them reach their full potential. And when we do that, we're actually more effective as leaders.
Yeah, absolutely, man. First off, thank you for your service. I didn't know that. So that's awesome. And you're right, man. It's one of the most, when we say it, it's like of course that makes sense. But from working with as many businesses as I've had the privilege of working with, it just still amazes me at how often we kind of miss the mark with this team element and the value of the people element. So I'm glad to hear you say that. We can't share that message enough.
Yeah, I agree with that. One thing that was interesting is the name of your company, Lee Malveaux. I listened to you on another podcast, so I kind of know the answer to this, but tell us about the origin of the story, or of how you named the company that, and where did it come from, and what was the inspiration behind it?
Oh man, yeah, it got a little Cajun undertone to it. And the reason why is because it's actually from my grandmother. So speaking of value of people, that's where I learned it. I learned the value of people through my grandmother. Growing up, we grew up in a poor town here in Southwest Florida, and she really just taught me growing up the value of just every person. We're growing up in a little immigrant town where there's so many different cultures and people. And so my grandmother had a really big impact and influence on my life. And then when she passed away in 2016 with cancer, I just wanted to do something, man, to keep her memory and legacy alive. And I remember one day I was looking down at her obituary and I saw her name. It was like Margaret Lee Malveaux. And I thought, well, that sounds kind of prestige. I've been thinking about starting a firm. I thought, that's it, Lee Malveaux. And so I looked it up, nothing existed yet. And I thought, this is it, let's move forward. So my grandmother, if you look at the logo, people always ask me, you do realize you're a man, right, Joshua? You have a woman's vector. You have a woman's vector in your logo. And it's my grandmother's face. It's actually her face. We made it into a vector. And it's at the end of the logo to really just honor her legacy.
I absolutely love that. Almost everyone I talked to on the show has had one person or one leader or a family member that inspired them to do what they do. And it's powerful that you give a salute to your grandmother in the name of your company and what you do. And I love that. I love that part of the story. That's why I wanted to ask you about it. But your company, what do you do? What's the mission of your business?
Man, that part you just said there about one person, one leader making an impact on someone's life. I guess when you look at the tagline for our business, we came up with maximizing your greatest resource, which is your people when it comes to the business. And it's for that reason. I think that's the reason why we came up with that tagline, because everything I do in life, I think, centers around that word value, and the value of one leader and the impact you can have on one employee. I even look at my career when I was working in the corporate world, in healthcare. It was one leader that I owe much of my polish as a professional to. And you just think about it, John. Like, if we may think it's only one person that we're impacting, but I've been able to work with thousands of leaders now. And a lot of it is because of one leader, like my grandmother, one leader, like, the last boss I had. And I want executives listening to that to really keep that in mind, because that's the work I do. I like to come into a business and help really get as much, maximize the value, optimize the value of the people, because when you can do that, your business will soar. And that's really why we look at a lot of the scientific side of the business, the behavioral side, because that's what pushes productivity. The HR trends, they just looked at Innovate HR just came out with a report talking about how there's like a bottleneck. They call it the productivity paradox, where we're seeing a lot of organizations are struggling with getting more productivity out of their people. But the reason that's happening in many cases is because there's those three kind of deficits that kill a team or kill an individual's performance: the value piece, the autonomy piece, to really just freely give their value and contribute, and then the opportunities aspect. And all of that, I think, is kind of what I like to, if I were to give someone a short answer, I like to go into an organization and really focus on.
It's interesting because I worked 22 years in corporate before starting my own manufacturing business, and I saw a lot of bad leaders. And in my businesses, when I was in corporate, I always outperformed my peers. And I remember them asking me, what am I doing differently? What's your secret? And I remember thinking, like, I don't know what my secret. I have no idea. Like, I have no idea. But you just talked about what my secret was, which was I care deeply for my employees, right? I made sure that they had everything they need to be successful. I cared for them. I spent time talking with them. I spent time on the manufacturing shop floor. I knew them. They knew who I was. I built relationships with my employees. And I thought, well, doesn't everybody do that? Well, what I found out was not everybody does that. It's actually what's interesting is that it is an underappreciated skill set of leadership, which is treating people with respect, treating them like humans, giving them worthwhile work, getting them training, helping them to grow in their career. Why do you think so many leaders miss this like obvious thing that, at least to me, and it sounds like to you as well?
Yeah, I think if we could answer that, we'd be two very rich gentlemen. Because that's the question of let's even look outside of business, right? That's the question for society, right?
Mm.
We look over history, just think about how many cases in our history we can look back at that time and say, why didn't people value each other? Why did we make color of skin a reason to not love each other, not be kind to one another, not respect one another? Why do we let, you name it, whatever it is, ethnicity, whatever, taste buds, whatever cause us division? And I think it kind of goes down to a core human element, which is it's very easy for us to forget that every human has something to contribute that is valuable. And I
Mm,
think we've kind of in business also, because of how business is structured, a lot of those people in the business that are at the implementation level of business oftentimes receive a lot of devaluing because those are, let's be honest, those are usually the easiest positions to replace. And so when you start looking at a human being as a replaceable, function, then it's very easy to slide down that slippery slope of not acknowledging and honoring that person's value. And so I think a lot of it has to do with our industrial kind of structure, where a lot of those lower paying jobs in a business sometimes can be overlooked as far as the humans are concerned. Um, I think that's why so many leaders get it wrong. Is your best performance comes when you give those people at that implementation level or the bottom level of earning, and you give them respect and you seek out their value. I mean, that's where some of the biggest grounds of innovation take place. And I think too many leaders oftentimes overlook that.
yeah, I definitely see that as well. When leaders and companies come to you and your company, what are some of the big problems they're trying to solve?
Hmm. It's a good question. Some of the big problems right now I'm seeing is the productivity piece. So how to get more performance out of your people, because since COVID, we've kind of blended that line between work and personal life. So there's a lot of, those personal challenges showing up more and more in the workplace. And a lot of leaders are realizing they're not equipped to, and I guess in their mind, be their employees, psychologists or counselor. But that's not what your employees require. It's just understanding the workforce that you are housing within your business. And a lot of let's say, for instance, the millennial generation really values connectedness. And so a lot of what I'm seeing is the business world in many ways has not caught up to the new workforce or the new workplace. And so a lot of the challenges I'm seeing are around productivity, around employee engagement, those are not new, but now the way that those challenges are play out, I should say, are new, because with remote work, which was kind of never a thing before, but now that's hindering communication on the team. Now there's a lot of the things as far as the different diversity and different cultures and race in the workplace. Now that's kind of becoming a high button issue in society. So organizations are trying to figure out how to navigate that. So those are some of the things I'm seeing, how people can really get back to focusing on the mission. That's why I came up with the mission critical performance method, because I wanted to help organizations get their people to focus back on the mission, because business itself is all about value. Just like people are valuable, business is all about value. It's about contributing value to your customers, but your customers are also your employees. So that's helping organizations make that paradigm shift to look at their employees as customers as well. It's kind of some of the work that I spend a lot of time helping to articulate.
You mentioned the mission critical performance framework. Tell us a little bit about what that's all about.
Well, yeah, the mission critical performance method is something I developed actually while working in my last corporate position. We had about 80,000 employees, and I just, everywhere I went, I kind of saw the same challenges, and it led me to creating a framework. And that framework was based off of three key drivers of performance. The first is the connection piece. The second is the conversation piece. And then the third is the cultivation piece. So another way to think of those is leadership, but not just focusing on leadership as some broad term, but focusing on the influence, the trust, influence, and harmony piece when it comes to leadership and when it comes to connections in the workplace. And then the conversation piece is really looking at performance and how we measure performance by looking at all of the micro conversations that take place in a business. Because I believe communication is the number one driver of performance. And so I wanted to come up with a methodology that helped teams to simplify their systems when it comes to their communication. So we came up with the mission critical conversations. And then the last one was the cultivation piece, which is the talent management. And the best way to put that is right people, right seats, and then you get higher productivity. So that's kind of the model from a high level view. And when you have those three things in alignment, we've seen that your productivity and performance will rise at least 21%.
Mm. And I believe it. I mean, these are essential things that leaders need to do. And one of the things you touch on is communication. And one of the things that I struggled to, leadership is difficult, right? And when I'm teaching leadership and training college students, for example, I'll say it comes down to three things, right? It's people, a mission, and motivation. So you're motivating people to achieve something difficult, right? And yet as leaders, we get lost in the daily routine of emails and meetings and what have you, and we forget about the mission. We forget about motivating people towards that mission, and we're off in meetings and we're busy, right? And I think when you get back down to it, when you're physically present with your employees, you're communicating with them on a daily basis, reminding them what their mission is and what their role is in helping achieve that mission. You're more likely to have success than if you're locked away in some meeting room someplace or in a call. But to me, communication is all about what I call a dialogue and not a monologue. And too many leaders are doing monologues. And I think it's about getting out to where your people are and having those conversations back and forth so that you build relationships and they understand the why behind the goals. That's what I think. I don't know if that makes sense, but to
Yeah.
me, I always want to know why we're doing something. A leader tells me we're gonna double our revenue next year. I'm like, why are we doing that? What's the purpose of this? How is this going to help the organization? And I want to know the why, and I know my employees want to know the why as well.
And that's absolutely right. And that's why I say performance really boils down to communication, because not only is it the why, but the why is definitely the starting point. But then you want people to know what are their, we call it, what's their number? Like, what's their accountability? Because once they know how they directly impact that goal and that objective, now you give them an opportunity to intrinsically, plug into it, and they can have, their own motivation and engagement because they know they're making a difference. And we as human beings, it makes a difference to us when we can make a difference in the world. And far too many times I've seen organizations allow the work to just slip into transactional work, where it's, hey, you should do the work because I'm giving you a paycheck. Well, as human beings, we're not wired. That's not how we stay at the highest level of motivation, psychologically. And so you have to give, if you want to see the highest performance from your team, you got to give them something, an inspiring vision to get behind. So yeah, we want to double revenue, but what's the end goal? Who are we helping if we double revenue? What does that signal? If we double revenue, that signals maybe we help 2,000 more customers who are having this challenge. We were able to brighten their life, brighten their day. And now we know each person on the team is responsible for 100 of these families that we've helped. Like, that's the kind of inspiring stuff that often doesn't get communicated throughout the organization enough. And you miss out on opportunities to really galvanize your employees and really scale your business exponentially.
Yeah, I think you touched on something. I think millennials and Gen Z they want to be working for a company that they believe in, and that they're doing something good in the world, right? I think I'm a Gen Xer, so we missed out on that. We were told to just work hard and then get the gold watch. But I see these younger generation, and I'm like, oh, these kids get it. It's not just about giving everything to a company, and sacrificing yourself for the mission. They want to be a part of something. They want to be part of an organization that's doing something special. And if you're not communicating what special thing you are doing in your company and in the world, they're going to go find someplace else which fits better with their beliefs. I mean, do you see that as well, as far as like retention of really younger workforce? You got to be doing something that's impacting the world.
Yeah, man, I think the stat just like 3 or 4 years ago, it's probably gotten higher, but 3 or 4 years ago, the stat was 64% of employees leave their leader, not the business.
Hmm.
So think about that. I mean, that right there tells you that even, years ago, it was still a lot of the same things where employees are looking for something. They'll stay at a job longer that pays a little bit less if they're intrinsically connected to it. There's an intrinsic motivation. And then with all the data coming out showing that folks who change jobs every 2 to 3 years tend to get paid higher. So now this generation's hearing that it's actually my benefit to reset that salary line. So you really, as an organization, want to make sure that you build up a culture, a system, a people strategy that really makes it hard for your people to leave because they feel so connected to the organization and the work.
I love that. That's such a great piece of advice. What are some other lessons you've learned, about leadership, about entrepreneurship, through all these interactions you've had with all these executives at startups and major corporations? What are some kind of lessons that you could leave our listeners with?
Man, that entrepreneurship topic, that's a whole show by itself. Entrepreneurship is hard. It is a hard journey. But I think when you begin to grow and you begin to see the families that your business, your dream, that dream that you had, that you want to go out and serve the world through whatever business you're doing, um, it's really I love to I love to come into a situation where entrepreneurs or executive leaders have lost a little bit of that shine in their eyes that they had when they first started because they were passionate about the mission of what they were doing. I love when we can kind of clear out a lot of the challenges and conflicts, which are usually around the people, and you see that return. You see a team go from being disgruntled and dysfunctional to really coming back together and getting locked in and targeted on the mission. And so that's for me. I think that's something that stands out as I've been able to work with more and more organizations and leaders. I think it's really never about the work. At the end of the day, when we sit down in that room or in that conference room, like I'm doing here this week, it's usually not about the work. It's usually about the people. And once you get that aspect right, the work is easy.
Hmm, I love that. What final message would you like to leave with our listeners today?
Well, there's an old John Maxwell quote that I think is pretty popular. It talks about how everything rises and falls on leadership and how leadership is DNA. And maybe you've heard that before, but I think it's worth taking a second, third, fourth look at because it's so true. Every organization I've worked with and had the privilege of serving, it all starts with the leaders. So the last thing I'll leave you with is if you have been having challenges in your business and you can't quite figure out, what's going on, or you see it's a kind of, you think it's more of a people staff, issue, start with your leadership cabinet first. Start with your lead, because I guarantee you there's some blind spots that your leaders on your cabinet, they know about, but you just haven't had the opportunity to sit down and talk. And I would challenge every leader listening to this to really don't let too many years go by without sitting down with the team and really resetting to say, what are we doing? What's working? What's not working? How can we improve the relationships on this team? Is there anything that I'm not seeing as a leader that would help me serve you all better? Ask your team some of these questions. And I know that's hard as an entrepreneur sometimes because we rejection and failure hurts, but your team will love you ever more for it. And they'll run through a brick wall for you if you show that kind of humility and vulnerability with your team, and your business will be better for it.
I love that. I love that. Leadership makes a difference. Leadership is critical. There are things that only the leader can do. And Jocko Willink famously says there's no such thing as a bad team, only bad leaders. And if you've got a problem in your company, it may be you. So it might have to look in the mirror and sort it out. And again, like Joshua said, have those humble conversations with your team. And how do you get reset?
Yes.
How do you get refocused? How do you get that energy back? Entrepreneurs, I'm talking to you. It's tough. I'm 8 years into the game. Elon Musk famously said, starting a business is like chewing glass and staring into a void. Eventually, the void goes away, but you'll never stop chewing glass. It's tough, it's hard, and sometimes we get discouraged. But we got to get back to that original. Why did we start this company? What was our passion when we started? And some days it's hard, but we got to go back to that if we want to keep our employees, keep them excited, keep them motivated, and work towards our goals. Joshua, this has been fantastic. How can our listeners find out more about you and your company?
Oh yeah, for sure. You can hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm always kind of floating around on LinkedIn, and also I think we're going to be giving the listeners for this episode something special. There's a value pack. Automation is something that's really coming up, so we put together kind of a automation, all things you need to know about AI for executives. It's actually from one of our friends, Execufy, who we think would be very beneficial to you all. So either that way, or follow, or hit me up through my email at joshua@leemalvo.com.
Fantastic. We're going to put links in the show notes for all of those resources. And again, if something that Joshua's talked about here resonated with you, if you had questions, if you say, well, maybe the light has gotten dim in my organization and you need help, highly encourage you to call Joshua. Get yourself a professional in there, help you re-energize it, get that light bulb shining bright again, and get your people motivated, because it's not worth it to die a slow death. Get energized, get excited, share your vision with your people, and you're going to make a difference in this world. So leadership is critical, and sometimes you need help. And Joshua is the kind of person that can help you be more effective. So Joshua, thank you for coming on the show and sharing your knowledge about this important topic.
No, thank you for having me. It's been great.
I appreciate it. Well, that's it for today. Thank you for listening to Deep Leadership. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and share so we can continue to build a world with better bosses. Until next time, this is John Rennie saying take care and lead well.